Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger into the nail marks, and put my hand into his sides, I will not believe." Now a week later his disciples were there again inside, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came, although the doors were locked, and stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Bring over your hand and put it into my side. And do not be unbelieving, but believe." Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you come to believe because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen, but have believed." The Gospel of the Lord.
It's very easy for the apostles to question St. Thomas, given that they all had seen him and they were quite sure at what they had seen, and Thomas somehow misses it. However, the credit to Thomas, before we completely throw him under the bus, is that he had the sense to come to the community for strength and fellowship in his doubt. That is what the community is for. And he was appealing to the apostles. So we're seeing the precursor of the substance of apostolic faith. He has an appeal to the apostolic faith, the apostolic church already, to bring him assurance in his shaken faith. And then we go a little bit further, and this encounter with Jesus is not just an encounter by sight, but it becomes very visceral. This is an encounter where Thomas is invited to literally touch the flesh of Jesus, where we now see the Eucharist coming forward as what brings the faith, where we touch the Eucharist when we're holding it in our hands, if that's where we take it, or we touch it with our tongue. But it's a very visceral experience for us. And so we're not eating something symbolically, but we're having this very tangible encounter with Christ where we literally take him in. And it's that encounter with the flesh of Christ that brings Thomas to this profound belief. In a couple of more weeks, we're sending our young people to Steubenville East. One of the high points of the Steubenville East retreat, where they see about 3,000 other young people, one of the high points is, and I've heard story after story, on the Saturday night of Steubenville East, they process with the Blessed Sacrament. And people, young people, okay, those kids you see on their skateboards, those kids that you see in their cars driving crazy, those kids who roam the halls of the school, who you think there's no hope for them, they're the ones who have an encounter with the Eucharist. It becomes extremely powerful and touching for them. One of my favorite experiences of this was when I was pastor in Hampton. This would be 10 years ago now. We brought a group to Steubenville East, a relatively small group, There were 5 boys in the group. Let us just say they were our hard cases whose parents forced to be there. And they were such hard cases that we had to assign an adult to supervise them, those 5, the whole weekend until Saturday night. And on Saturday night, I was in charge of supervising them, those little rascals. I was sitting right behind them, and the procession of the Eucharist started. Now, these boys, for every conference, they literally crossed their arms, put their head down, and turned their shoulders away from the speaker. For every conference, they were obviously in total rebellion mode. I'm sitting behind them, and the Eucharistic procession is coming, and it's drawing close. And the little voice, like Elijah, the voice that Elijah hears, all I hear is, point to me for them. So I tapped the first one on my left on the shoulder, and I pointed, and he looked. And I tapped the second one, I pointed, and he looked. Third, fourth, and fifth, all the way down the line. When I was finished tapping each of them and pointing, I look back, and all 5 of them were on the ground in a fetal position, bawling their eyes out. They had a powerful encounter with Jesus Christ. They literally saw him in the Eucharist. This is what we hold in our hands. This is what we touch on our tongue. This is Jesus who comes among us. And in a sense, we're like Thomas. We don't see with the physical eyes, but we have come to believe in my Lord and my God because of the Eucharistic presence.
Regina Celi, laetare